In a museum in Boston, there are 4 empty frames. They have been empty for nearly 40 years. The museum could fill them, it has other paintings, it has the money, it has the walls. But it won't. Because somewhere out there in a warehouse, a basement, maybe even a closet, is $500 million worth of stolen art. And the woman who built this museum left one instruction in her will: never change a single thing. So the frames stay empty on purpose. As a scar, as a question that refuses to heal. This is the story of the biggest art heist in American history. One that started with 2 fake police officers, a broken rule, and 81 minutes that changed everything. And somehow, nearly 40 years later, we still don't know how it ends. Her name was Isabella Stewart Gardner. In the late 1800s, she was one of the wealthiest women in America and one of the strangest by the standards of her time. She smoked in public. She walked a lion on a leash down the streets of Boston just to see people's faces. Newspapers loved her. High society didn't always know what to do with her. But underneath the scandal, she was something else entirely. She was one of the most serious art collectors of her generation. For decades, she traveled through Europe with her husband, buying paintings not because they were smart investments, but because she loved them. She studied under scholars. She negotiated directly with dealers. She built relationships with artists most collectors only read about. By 1903, she had turned that obsession into something permanent. A 4-story Venetian palace in the middle of Boston, built brick by brick, room by room to house her collection. Inside were Rembrandts, a rare Vermeer, one of only a few dozen that exist anywhere in the world. Works by Titian, Botticelli, and Manet. She opened it to the public, and she attached one condition to her will. Nothing in the museum could ever be moved. Not a painting, not a chair, not a single vase on a single shelf. If anyone violated that rule, her entire estate would be liquidated. Sold off, given away, gone. She wanted the museum frozen in time, exactly as she left it. Forever. She had no idea how literally that promise would one day be tested. March 17, 1990, St. Patrick's Day. Boston was loud, crowded, and distracted. Thousands of people were out on the streets, celebrating late into the night. The night before the theft, a guard on duty had noticed something strange on the security monitors. A stranger was being let inside the museum after hours, against every rule in the building. No one investigated it. It was written off as nothing unusual. It wasn't nothing. Investigators would later believe it was a rehearsal, a dry run to see exactly how the guards would react. 24 hours later, at 1:24 in the morning, 2 men dressed as Boston police officers rang the buzzer at the museum's side entrance. They said they were responding to a disturbance call. The museum's rules were absolute. Never let anyone inside after hours for any reason. If police showed up, you called the real department to confirm it first. The guard on duty broke that rule. He opened the door. It was the single decision that made everything that followed possible. "Gentlemen, this is a robbery," one of the men said. Within minutes, both guards were overpowered, handcuffed, and wrapped in duct tape. They were bound to pipes in the basement, far from any alarm, any phone, and any way to call for help. For the next 81 minutes, the 2 men moved through the museum as if they had all the time in the world. In the Dutch room, they pulled Rembrandt's only known seascape, Storm on the Sea of Galilee, right out of its frame. They sliced the canvas free with a blade instead of removing it properly. Then they left the empty frame hanging exactly where it had always been. They took a Vermeer, one of roughly 3 dozen in existence, so rare that any single one of them is considered irreplaceable. They took 5 delicate Degas sketches. A Manet, a small Chinese bronze beaker, thousands of years old, and a bronze eagle finial pried off the top of a flagstaff. And then something strange happened. Something investigators still can't fully explain. Just a few feet away in the same room hung a Titian, one of the single most valuable paintings in the entire museum, arguably worth more than several of the pieces they did take. They left it completely untouched. They also passed over other high-value works nearby, choosing instead to take smaller, stranger items. Pieces that made little financial sense next to what they ignored. It was as if two different instincts were competing inside the same robbery. One chasing fame and history, the other just grabbing whatever could be carried quickly. Before they left, they pulled the security videotape out of the recorder and took that too, erasing the only footage of their faces. At 2:45 in the morning, they walked out into an empty street. No alarms, no sirens, no witnesses. The two guards tied up in the basement weren't discovered until 8:15 the next morning, nearly 7 hours later. In the days that followed, the case exploded into a national obsession. A reward was announced. $1 million at first. Later it climbed to $5 million. And finally to $10 million, one of the largest rewards in the history of American law enforcement. And the theories started almost immediately. One name kept surfacing. Miles Connor, a notorious New England art thief with a strange specialty, stealing paintings specifically to trade them for reduced prison sentences. He had done it before, but at the exact moment of the Gardner heist, Connor had an airtight alibi. He was already behind bars. Investigators turned to his close associate instead, a Boston mob figure named Bobby Donati. According to Connor's own later account, Donati had cased the museum with him years earlier and may have organized the theft as leverage. A bargaining chip to free jailed associates in the New England crime family. There was just one problem. In 1991, roughly a year after the heist, Donati was found murdered. His killing remains unsolved to this day. Whatever he knew, he took most of it with him. Then in 1994, the museum received a letter. No signature. Postmarked New York. The writer claimed he could arrange the painting's return in exchange for $2.6 million and full immunity from prosecution for everyone involved. The FBI investigated. The lead went nowhere. More names surfaced over the following decades. A Maine bank robber named Robert Garrett, whose widow later told the FBI that her husband had once had 2 of the paintings, before passing them on to a Connecticut associate named Robert Gentile. Investigators searched Gentile's Connecticut home in 2013. They found no paintings, but they did find something unsettling. A handwritten list of the stolen artworks, along with their estimated black market value. Gentile denied everything until the day he died in 2021. Every few years, a new name, a new theory, a new dead end. The painting stayed gone. In 2013, 23 years after the robbery, the FBI made an announcement that stunned the country. They said they finally knew who had carried out the theft. 2 men, both tied to a Boston area criminal organization, were identified internally as the thieves. But there would be no trial, no confession in open court, no arrest. Both men were already dead. One from a drug overdose, the other murdered, years before the FBI ever spoke their names publicly. Investigators believed the stolen paintings had been moved out of Massachusetts sometime after the heist, passing through Connecticut and Philadelphia, where an attempt was reportedly made to sell them roughly a decade later. After that attempted sale, the trail went cold. Completely cold. The handful of people who might have known exactly where the art ended up, the men who could have answered nearly 40 years of questions, were already gone. Today, the reward still stands at $10 million. One of the largest rewards ever offered for stolen property anywhere in American history. And the frames are still empty. Not because no one has tried to fill them. Because Isabella Stewart Gardner's will still governs every square inch of that building, exactly as it did in 1903. Nothing may be moved. Nothing may be changed. So visitors still walk past the same bare frame where Rembrandt's only seascape once hung. An outline where a masterpiece used to be. Now just empty space with a shape. It's easy to think of this as a story about paintings. It isn't. Not really. It's a story about what we choose to protect. And what slips through our fingers the one time we look away. A guard broke one rule for less than a minute on one ordinary night. And nearly 40 years later, the world is still paying for it. Not in money. In silence. Somewhere those 13 works of art still exist. Or they don't. No one knows. And maybe that's the most unsettling part of this story. It doesn't end. It just waits.